we die, we die. If we die, we die.
Welcome to Big Red Radio. This is Bet the Mortgage. If this is your first time here, we give the best picks for all of the college football weekend. We are sitting at 41-25 on the year, 62%. But make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss an episode, and make sure you follow all the socials in the description for all extra content that we put out. But getting into it, my record after my 3-0 week last week is 22-11, sitting at 66%, while Zach is now 19-14. Also had a good week, went 2-1 last week, sitting at 56%. So I'm about 10% above. The only way Zach can catch me is if I go 0-3 this week and he goes 3-0, depending on what we do for bowl games. But those are so spread apart, we probably won't make a video for that. So this might be the last time you're seeing us for a while, unless we want to talk about some other things. Yeah, unless we want to talk about the playoff. But we each have 3 picks. The way we do it is we draft based on who did better the previous week. First pick, other person gets second pick, snake style. So my first pick in the draft was Bama +5 over Georgia. So to me, the discourse all week has been Alabama struggled against Auburn. There's no way they beat Georgia. They got so lucky, which is true. They did get lucky. They had a big play at the end, the Hail Mary. But let's not forget, earlier this year, Georgia only beat Auburn by 7. And just last week, Georgia beat Georgia Tech by 8. This Georgia Tech team that lost to Bowling Green. So I don't know why Alabama's getting punished for playing a close rivalry game when Georgia also played that same game and only won by 7. So I think they're close in talent. I think they're close in coaching. It'll be a close one. I don't know who wins, but 5.5 points is too much to give Alabama.
My first pick is in the Big 12 title game, over 55 points. Starting off, Oklahoma State obviously has shown in the past that they can put up points. 29 against Kansas State, 39 against Kansas, 48 against West Virginia, 45 against Cincinnati, 43 against Houston, 40 against BYU in their last 8 or 9 games. And then Texas is obviously where I feel that a lot of these points will come from on this over. So even against good teams, right? So Texas put up 34 against a really good Alabama team. They put up 40 on Kansas. They put up 30 on Oklahoma in a game where they really didn't play all that great. 31 on Houston, 35 on BYU, 33 on Kansas State, 26 on Iowa State, 29 on TCU. So look for this game to be quite high scoring. I think this over-under is set. I think it's set low because they think it'll be a defensive battle. But, I mean, Oklahoma State's defense isn't really, wonderful by any means. And Texas obviously has a good defense, but not stout defense like they have stout on their offense.
Yeah, so staying in that game, my next pick is Oklahoma State. Plus, I think the line has moved all the way up to 15.5 now. Texas hasn't been able to close out games all year. They've only had a few blowouts. They lost to Oklahoma by 4, beat Houston by 7, beat K-State by 3 in overtime, beat TCU by 3, and they beat Iowa State by 10. Oklahoma State loves to run the ball with Ollie Gordon, one of the best backs in the country. They're going to control the clock. And Texas can win by 2 scores or 2 touchdowns and still not cover. So pretty easy for me, Texas or Oklahoma State plus 15.5.
So my next one is actually another over. So we're going to the Big Ten here. So over 34.5 on the Big Ten title game, only because I think Michigan will score over 35. I mean, if you can put up 30 on Ohio State has a way better defense than Iowa. You can put up 24 on Penn State, who has a better defense than Iowa. And you can put up 45 on a Nebraska team that maybe has an even or just below defense if you're looking at them compared to Iowa. I think you can put up 35 on an Iowa team. I mean, a few of those might even be defensive touchdowns, special team touchdowns. And I do think Iowa gets a field goal. So I think that helps the line. So it'll be like 42-3, I think is the final score prediction for me.
Yeah. The only thing with me for that is – Iowa, they don't do a lot of things well, but the things they do well are control the clock and control field position. So
Yeah,
I don't
no.
know.
So here's my thing with
I could
controlling
see it
field
ending
position, right?
28 to 3, 28 nothing.
Absolutely. Could be. But here's my thing controlling field position. They were great at it last year because although Spencer Peters was a bad quarterback, he really didn't turn the ball over much.
Yeah.
He didn't hit his own players very often, but he didn't really throw it to the other team. Deacon Hill's the other way around, right? He throws picks, he fumbles the ball, he makes bad reads and throws into coverage. And so it's hard to, as we saw in the Nebraska game, get good field position when you can't put your punter out on the field to get that good field position. And so I feel like, Michigan forced turnovers against Cade McNamara, or not Cade McNamara, Ohio State's quarterback, blanking on his name right
Kyle
now.
McCord.
Yeah, Kyle McCord. And I think he's miles better than Deacon Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, you're going to force a lot of turnovers here. And Michigan, their goal should be to keep Troy Taylor off the field and force those turnovers, right?
Yeah.
Because if you can force turnovers, then this game's over.
Right. Right. Yeah. So my last pick is the one I feel worst about, but it's Oregon -9. Oregon's rolling. They're playing better than anybody in the country. The closest game they've had since losing to Washington was a 9-point win over USC, where they really controlled the whole game from start to finish. Washington hasn't won a game by more than 10 in that same time frame against the same teams that Oregon's playing. I mean, you look at the game last week against Washington State, won on a last-second field goal. I know that's a rivalry game. You look at the game before that with Oregon State. Oregon State's a good team. They only won by, 5? 22-17, I think, was the final. Oregon won that game 31-7, I think. So I think Oregon really, really performs well in this one. I just don't. I just think Washington's offense has the ability to explode. And if they come into this game pumped up enough, motivated enough, then I think that there's going to be a lot of points on the board. 9.5, though, I think Oregon does win this game. 9.5 scares me a little bit, but I'm still going to roll with the Ducks on this one.
Sorry, I actually saved my best pick, I think, or my favorite pick for last. Florida State -1.5. I get their backup may not play, which isn't great, right? But
Mhm.
their third string did come in against Florida, and he looked all right. Um, Louisville didn't look that great against Kentucky, and Louisville hasn't really looked that great all year. Like they've looked good, but not like
I
that.
mean, they've looked good. Like they've beaten good teams. They beat Notre Dame pretty handily.
Yeah, but like I mean, Notre Dame week 3
Sure.
is an entirely different team than Notre Dame come conference championship week. I mean, Notre Dame's like what, like a 25-20 team. Come to find out,
Yeah.
where before we thought they were top 10, even a top 5 team, and so
Right.
it's kind of like Ohio State beating Notre Dame. Like at the time, that looked wonderful, but now that looks entirely different. Same with Colorado beating TCU. At the time, that looked huge, but now like we know TCU's
Sure.
fraudulent. Um, at the beginning, I was a Florida State hater. I still think they are probably the worst undefeated team. Um, I think they get beat by
Liberty's undefeated.
okay, the worst Power Five
Power
undefeated
5.
team.
Yeah.
I think any of the other Power Five undefeated teams beat them by 2 scores, but I love the story of the whole quarterback. Play for Jordan Travis, and their backup was playing well against Florida until he got speared, which the Gators always do dirty stuff, always do it against Florida State, and I hate it. And that's why I don't like Florida very much. But I do think that they pull it out here, win the ACC. Hopefully make the playoff because I feel like it's unfair to hold them.
Right. Is it okay? Let's have this conversation real quick before we get off. I get the argument that it's unfair, but in this
No, it
scenario,
is. I mean, it blatantly
right?
is.
Sure, I understand. But in the scenario, hypothetical scenario that Alabama beats Georgia, you're left with Michigan.
Okay, we'll start. Okay, in the scenario that every favorite wins their conference title game except Alabama beats Georgia. Is that the
Okay.
scenario we're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, Michigan.
Yes.
That's easy, right? Okay. Number two is probably Oregon.
Do you think they pass Florida State?
Yes.
I mean, who's number 3
I
right
think
now?
Florida State. I think Florida State goes
Washington?
3. Third is Washington right
Okay. So in your argument, Florida State goes 3. Who's 4?
now. Correct. I think you have to give it to Texas, honestly.
Right.
As
You
dumb
can't.
as that sounds.
I completely agree. The only thing I would change, Texas would go to number 3. Alabama would, I think, jump Florida State.
That's which, don't get me wrong. I think those are the top 4 teams.
Right.
Okay. I think that's, if you want the top 4 teams, I think that's how you make the playoff. But I don't think it's fair, right? And we've seen it with Cincinnati. When Cincinnati made the playoff.
Sure. But in that was also a different
it wasn't-
scenario where we didn't have an undefeated Power 5. If there was an undefeated Power 5, Cincinnati wouldn't, like, to replace
True.
Cincinnati
But,
wouldn't
like,
have made it.
Like, people are saying, well, you have to hold them out because they have the backup quarterback in. Well, no. In the first year of the playoff, Ohio State won the national title with a third string quarterback. A third
Right.
string. I
But
believe
they
it
had
was
also
Cardale Jones.
they'd also proved, like, Cardale Jones won the Big Ten championship, I'm pretty sure, that year. So it's not like
Okay,
I guess
so what if
I guess
what if
they
what
could
if
win
the
the
backup
ACC.
quarterback wins the ACC?
You're right.
You know,
You're right. You're right.
you
But I
already
think
beat Florida.
you gotta look a little bit at eye test. You know, like, yes, it's not fair,
Yeah,
but also
like,
do you
Okay,
want
if
to
you wanna look
ruin?
at eye
Do you
test-
want to ruin one of
you
the
wanna look at eye
playoff
test-
games?
you want to look at eye test. Alabama, 4th and 31 down against Auburn. Eye
Sure,
test.
but they won that game. Like,
Okay,
eye
but
test.
so you can't
Georgia
look at
also.
eye test from.
This is like what I'm saying. Georgia
If
also
Florida
only
State's
beat
undefeated,
Auburn.
they win.
Right, but you
If Florida
you
State's
can't tell
undefeated,
me.
they win games.
But you can't tell me. Like you said it yourself, Florida State is not one of the best 4 teams in the country.
No, but I mean, you can't leave them out.
Right.
Was Cincinnati a
I
top
agree
4
with
team
you.
that year? Was Cincinnati a top 4 team that year?
No, but they didn't have anybody to replace them. Like they didn't like Alabama.
But why didn't they have
the SEC champ? You
there was
think
a
the
one-loss
SEC champ would get left out of the playoff?
Don't lose to Texas. I'm sorry.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. If Alabama gets in, Texas also has to be in. I just think the committee would leave Florida State out in that scenario.
I agree, and I think it's dumb.
I don't think it's fair. I also don't think it's dumb, though. You only get 3 playoff games a year. Do you want to ruin one of them? Like any of those top 3 teams that plays Florida State, that's a double-digit spread. Probably.
But you don't know that.
Probably.
You don't
It
know
probably is. It probably is.
Probably, but I want Florida State in bad.
How many teams?
I want Florida State to be in. I want Florida State to succeed.
I'm going to rattle off top 10 teams right now. And I want you to tell me, or I'm going to rattle off the college football playoff rankings. I want you to tell me when you think I get to a team that Florida State is better than. Georgia. No. Right? Michigan. No. Washington. No. Oregon. No. Ohio State. No. Texas. No. Alabama. No. Are they better than Missouri?
Probably.
Probably not. At this point, without Jordan Travis, probably not. Penn State.
Probably.
Probably not. Without Jordan Travis? Probably not. Ole Miss. Are they better than Ole Miss without Jordan Travis? You have to include they barely beat Florida.
That's a rivalry game, Caleb. That's a rivalry game.
Okay. But I'm just saying, Oklahoma. And then we get down to LSU, who they beat with Jordan Travis. So I'll give you that one. But, like, there's comfortably 7 to 8 teams better than Florida State, in our opinion. Right?
Sure.
I mean, Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama. That's 7. You can make the argument about Missouri. You can make the argument about Penn State. You can make the argument about Ole Miss. Oklahoma's up there. LSU. Who knows what LSU plays like without Jordan Travis on the other side. Arizona's playing well. Notre Dame. Okay, we're getting to the point where it's probably not. Florida State's probably better than these teams, but, like, I get the fairness aspect, but also you want to put the best product on the field. Now, we could be talking about this all. Georgia could win. Michigan's probably going to win. Washington could beat Oregon, and Florida State could win the ACC. That's 4 teams. You're done.
Yep.
In that scenario, you're done. Now, in the scenario where Georgia wins, Michigan wins, Oregon wins, and Florida State wins, I think Oregon gets in, Florida State gets in. I think the only scenario Florida State doesn't get in is if Alabama beats Georgia, right? Because at that point, you got to make the argument for Texas, assuming Texas also wins. So,
what are you watching?
I think that's a good place to end it. But I think I can't wait for this weekend and this Selection Sunday. It's going to be a good one. You got anything before we sign off?
Nope.
All right. We don't know when we'll see you again for Bet the Mortgage, but stay tuned. On Monday, there'll be a Big Red Radio full show episode breaking down the biggest needs for Nebraska's offseason. But we'll see you then.
If we die, we die. If we die, we die.